There is a darkness that walks among us. It does not announce itself with thunder or fury. It whispers, it smiles, it shakes your hand, and before you realize it, it has wrapped itself around your life like an invisible chain. Evil is not always loud. It does not always arrive with fire and blood. More often, it comes dressed in charm, in promises, in carefully chosen words. It moves in silence, unseen, until it is too late. Wisdom seekers, if you have ever felt the weight of an unseen force pulling you down, if you have ever sensed something wrong in a person you could not explain, you are not imagining it. There are those in this world who do not build, but destroy. Not by accident, not by weakness, but by nature. And if you cannot see them, it is because they do not want to be seen. Tonight, we pull back the mask. The great Stoic philosophers, men who faced the darkest corners of human nature, knew the truth. The greatest battles are not fought on the battlefield, but in the soul. Seneca warned us, he who is cruel to others is also cruel to himself. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Evil is not always a monster in the dark. Sometimes it is a man sitting right beside you. Today, I will show you the 8 undeniable signs of truly evil people. Those who take, corrupt, and devour without remorse. Those who live among us unnoticed, shaping the world in ways you would never suspect. If you do not recognize them, you are their prey. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Every like, subscribe helps us continue our mission of sharing knowledge. And leave a comment below and share your opinion on these signs, or tell me which one resonates with you the most. Ready to unlock more wisdom? Let's get started. Sign 1. They manipulate without conscience. Evil never takes. It convinces you to give. And by the time you realize what has happened, you have nothing left. Wisdom seekers, imagine this. You meet someone who seems kind, intelligent, maybe even admirable. They listen when you speak. They make you feel important. But over time, something shifts. The balance tilts. You start making compromises, small ones at first. Things so subtle you barely notice. You find yourself explaining away their behavior, making excuses for them, bending your own reality to accommodate their needs. And yet somehow you feel guilty. You feel as if you are the one who has failed them. This is not an accident. This is manipulation, pure, calculated, and deliberate. Evil people do not manipulate with force. That would be too obvious, too crude. Instead, they twist perception itself. They make you doubt yourself, question your instincts. They use charm, flattery, and even kindness as weapons, softening your defenses until you cannot tell where their influence ends and your own thoughts begin. The Stoics understood this danger well. Epictetus warned, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. This is the essence of manipulation. Evil people do not take control of your life through violence, but through influence. They make you willingly give them power. Look closely at the people around you. Have you ever known someone who made you feel small while pretending to lift you up? Someone who always managed to shift blame, to turn the conversation until you were the one apologizing for something they had done? This is not an accident. This is a design. True manipulators do not act out of emotion or impulsiveness. They are precise. They study your weaknesses, your desires, and your fears. They know what words to use, what tone of voice to adopt, what gestures will make you feel safe, even as they strip away your confidence, your independence, your very sense of self. Consider the way a spider weaves its web. It does not chase its prey. It does not roar or threaten. It simply waits. It lets the fly land, lets it struggle just enough to exhaust itself, and then it moves. This is how manipulators work. They give just enough to make you stay, just enough kindness to make you second-guess your instincts, just enough approval to keep you coming back for more. But in the end, they always take. Do not underestimate this kind of evil. A violent enemy is obvious. A manipulator is invisible. And by the time you realize what they have done, you are already caught in their web. The question is, will you escape before it is too late? Sign 2. They take pleasure in the suffering of others. There is a sickness that lives inside some people. It does not seek peace, love, or even power. It seeks suffering. Think back to the people you have encountered in life. Have you ever met someone who smiled when others were in pain? Someone who seemed energized, even delighted, when they saw others struggle? It is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it is as subtle as a smirk at the wrong moment, a glimmer of satisfaction in their eyes when someone fails, a carefully concealed excitement when someone they pretend to care about is humiliated or broken. This is not mere cruelty. This is something deeper, something darker, a pleasure in destruction. True evil does not harm out of necessity or anger. It harms because it wants to, because it enjoys the feeling of power that comes from seeing another human being suffer. The Stoics understood this well. Seneca once said, "He who enjoys the pain of others has already lost his own humanity." But the truly evil do not see this as a loss. To them, it is a gift. You may think that such people are rare, that they exist only in history books or crime reports, but they are everywhere. They are the coworker who delights in watching others fail, the so-called friend who never celebrates your success, but always lingers when you are struggling, the partner who seems most loving when you are at your weakest, not because they want to help, but because they want to keep you there. Evil people do not build, they destroy, not because they must, but because they crave it. Watch closely. The signs are always there. Do they gravitate toward gossip, reveling in the misfortune of others? Do they create chaos, then stand back and enjoy the spectacle? Do they push people to their limits, just to see them break? These are not accidents. These are symptoms of something far more sinister. And here's the most dangerous truth. They do not see themselves as evil. They believe they are strong, superior, justified in their actions. They see their victims as weak, as deserving of their suffering. They rewrite reality itself to fit their own twisted logic. Remember this, wisdom seekers. When a person finds joy in suffering, they are already lost. Their soul is corrupted beyond return. And if you stand too close, they will pull you into their darkness. So ask yourself, who in your life smiles when others bleed? And more importantly, are you still standing close enough to see it? Sign 3. They lie as easily as they breathe. There are people in this world for whom truth is not a principle, not a virtue, not even a consideration. It is merely an inconvenience, a barrier to be bent, twisted, or discarded whenever necessary. A truly evil person does not just tell lies, they live them. Their existence is a tapestry of deception, woven so carefully that even they may begin to believe it. They do not lie out of necessity, as ordinary people sometimes do to avoid trouble or spare feelings. No, their lies serve a greater purpose: control. Wisdom seekers, have you ever known someone whose words felt slippery? Someone who could say one thing in the morning and the opposite in the evening without a trace of guilt or hesitation? Someone who, when confronted with the truth, does not falter or confess, but instead doubles down, weaving yet another layer of deception? This is no accident. This is the art of lying perfected. To the evil mind, the truth is a weakness. It is a burden carried only by the naive, by those too foolish to see that reality is whatever you can convince others to believe. And so, they construct their own version of the world, bending facts to suit their will. Marcus Aurelius warned us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. What then happens to the soul that is bathed in falsehood? It becomes unrecognizable, a shifting, formless thing, no longer bound by morality or conscience. The most dangerous liars are not those who tell grand, obvious falsehoods, but those who distort reality itself. They mix lies with just enough truth to make them believable. They rewrite history, not in books, but in your mind, in your memory. They make you question what you saw, what you heard, what you know. This is called gaslighting, and it is one of the most insidious tools of evil. They will tell you that things did not happen the way you remember, that you are imagining things, that you are overreacting. They will twist words, alter narratives, and leave you doubting your own perception. And the more you doubt yourself, the easier you are to control. Consider this. If you cannot trust your own mind, whose mind must you rely on? Theirs. That is the goal. To become the architect of your reality, to ensure that you no longer look to reason, logic, or evidence, but only to them. And when a person reaches this point, they are no longer a victim. They are a prisoner. The Stoics taught us that the greatest power a man possesses is the ability to see the world as it truly is. Epictetus said, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." But the liar does the opposite. They first decide what they want to achieve, and then they speak, regardless of whether their words bear any resemblance to the truth. So how do you recognize such a person? Watch their words, but more importantly, watch their actions. Do their stories change depending on who is listening? Do they deny things they once claimed? Do they twist facts, not to protect themselves, but to harm and control others? The greatest liars are not those who deceive the world, but those who deceive themselves, and in doing so, they become something less than human. Remember this: a man who has no regard for the truth has no regard for anything. And if you let such a person into your life, you will find that your own reality begins to dissolve, until one day, you wake up and you do not know what is real anymore. Sign 4. They lack remorse, because they lack a soul. Guilt. It is the weight we carry when we have wronged another, the inner voice that reminds us of our failures, that urges us to correct our course, to seek forgiveness. It is what separates the moral from the immoral, the human from the inhuman. But what happens when that voice is silent? There are those in this world who do not feel guilt, not because they have never done wrong, but because they are incapable of it. To them, regret is a foreign concept, an emotion they see in others but do not understand. They can destroy lives, betray those closest to them, and walk away without a second thought. Wisdom seekers, think of a time when you have made a mistake, when you have hurt someone unintentionally. You carried that weight, did you not? It sat with you, whispered in your mind, demanded to be acknowledged. This is what makes you human. But an evil person feels nothing. They can lie, steal, manipulate, and even ruin lives, and they will sleep soundly at night. Why? Because to them, emotions like guilt and shame are weaknesses. They see them in others and scoff. They believe they are above such petty concerns, and in time, they convince themselves that they have done nothing wrong at all. Seneca once wrote, "A guilty conscience needs no accuser." But what of the man who has no conscience? He is free. Free to harm, free to exploit, free to commit unspeakable acts without ever looking back. Such people do not learn from their mistakes because they do not believe they make mistakes. They do not seek redemption because they do not believe they need it. And here's the greatest danger. They know how to mimic emotion. They have studied human behavior, observed what guilt looks like, what sorrow sounds like, what regret should feel like, and they perform it when necessary. But it is a mask, a hollow imitation. And if you look closely, you will see the cracks. Watch their reactions when confronted with their wrongdoing. Do they truly take responsibility, or do they simply say the right words? Do they seek to make amends, or do they simply wish to move past the inconvenience of being caught? Do they change, or do they simply shift their tactics? Remorselessness is the mark of a person who has severed themselves from humanity. They see people as tools, as stepping stones, as obstacles to be removed or resources to be drained. And when they have taken all they can from you, they will walk away without hesitation, without reflection, without regret. Because to them, you were never a person. You were merely a means to an end. The Stoics believed that the only true evil is the corruption of one's own soul. And what is greater corruption than a life lived without remorse? A man without guilt is a man without limits. A man without limits is a danger to everyone around him. And if you do not recognize him in time, you will learn this lesson in the most painful way possible. Sign 5. They exploit trust and betray without hesitation. Trust is the foundation of all human relationships. It is what allows us to love, to cooperate, to build. Without trust, society itself collapses. And yet, there are those who do not see trust as something sacred, but as something to be exploited. Evil people do not force their way into your life with aggression. That would be too obvious, too crude. Instead, they slip into your world like shadows, whispering the words you long to hear, mirroring your hopes, your fears, your dreams. They gain your trust not by demanding it, but by appearing to earn it. But make no mistake, every act of kindness, every gesture of warmth is a calculation, a means to an end. They are not building a bond, they are setting a trap. And once you have given them your trust, once you have opened yourself to them, that is when the betrayal begins. Think of the people you have trusted in your life, the ones you let close, the ones you confided in. Have you ever felt the sting of betrayal? That sharp, unbearable pain that only comes when someone you believed in, someone you loved, turns against you? It is unlike any other wound, because it does not just cut the flesh, it poisons the soul. Evil people understand this, and they take pleasure in it. The great Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius warned us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. But what if your enemy is someone you once called a friend? What if the betrayal comes not from a stranger, but from someone who once swore loyalty, love, or friendship? That is the true nature of evil. It does not always come from the outside. Sometimes it grows within your very walls. Consider how these people operate. At first they make you feel special. They create an illusion of closeness, making you believe that your bond is unbreakable. They listen, they understand, they support. But this is not genuine. This is gathering ammunition. Every secret you share, every vulnerability you expose, is filed away in their mind, not for safekeeping, but for future use. And then, when the time comes, they strike. They twist your words. They use your past against you. They leak your secrets at the perfect moment, ensuring maximum damage. They smile as they dismantle the trust you gave them so freely. And when you finally see them for what they are, when you confront them, what do? They blame you. They will say you are too sensitive, that you misunderstood, that they never meant to hurt you. And if you still resist, they will turn others against you, rewriting the story so that you become the villain. This is the nature of evil. It never takes responsibility. It only destroys. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And what greater waste is there than giving your trust to those who only seek to betray it? So how do you protect yourself? How do you see them before it is too late? Watch for the patterns. Do they betray others and justify it? Do they twist truths and shift blame? Do they treat trust as something disposable? Remember this: a person who is betrayed once will betray again. It is not an accident, it is a pattern, and the only way to win their game is to refuse to play it. Sign 6. They crave power, not because they need it, but because they enjoy it. Power. It is one of the oldest and most dangerous desires known to man. Some seek it to build, others seek it to protect, but the truly evil seek power for one reason and one reason only, because they enjoy it. Wisdom seekers. Have you ever noticed how some people seem obsessed with control? Not just over their own lives, but over others? They dictate, they manipulate, they demand obedience, not because it is necessary, but because it feeds them. This is not leadership. This is not strength. This is hunger. The hunger for domination. The desire to bend others to their will, not for any greater purpose, but for the sheer pleasure of it. Evil people do not want power to create change. They do not seek authority to make things better. They crave it because it makes them feel something they lack in every other aspect of their existence. The great Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius warned us, the soul is dyed with the color of its thoughts. What then does a soul become when all it craves is control? History is littered with the ruins of men who sought power for its own sake. Tyrants, dictators, warlords, men who did not seek to lead but to own, who saw people not as individuals but as pawns. But not all such people wear crowns. Some sit behind desks, ruling over workplaces like emperors. Some stand in homes, controlling their families with fear and manipulation. Some walk among us, disguised as friends, lovers, mentors, always watching, always pulling strings, always ensuring that they are the ones in control. How do they do it? They start small. They test boundaries. They see how much you will tolerate, how much control they can exert before you push back. And when you accept their demands, no matter how small, you have already lost. Because the moment you give them power, they will not stop. It is never enough. They will push further. They will demand more. They will take from you piece by piece until you no longer recognize yourself. And when they have full control, when they have bent you to their will, what then? Do they finally feel fulfilled? Do they finally find peace? No, because there is no end to their hunger. The moment they have conquered one person, they move to the next, and the next, and the next. Evil is never satisfied. It is a fire that consumes everything in its path. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And this is the great irony of those who seek power for its own sake. They believe they are the masters, but in truth they are the slaves. Slaves to their own insatiable hunger, to their need for control, to the emptiness inside them that can never be filled. So how do you recognize them? Look for those who cannot handle being questioned, those who demand obedience, not respect, those who see every relationship as a hierarchy where they must always be on top. A person who truly seeks power for the sake of power is already lost, and if you let them into your life, they will not stop until they have taken everything from you. Sign 7. They take pleasure in the suffering of others. There is a darkness that lurks in certain souls, a darkness so profound, so unnatural, that it defies explanation. These are the people who do not merely harm others by accident, nor even out of necessity, but because they enjoy it. Yes, wisdom seekers, there are those who find pleasure in suffering. They may not always reveal it openly, but if you look closely, if you observe their actions and the way they respond to the pain of others, you will see it. The flicker of satisfaction, the barely concealed smirk, the way their eyes light up when they witness another's despair. Have you ever known someone who seems happier when you are struggling? Someone who, instead of offering comfort, subtly makes things worse? Someone who, when you share your pain, does not sympathize but instead makes you feel even smaller? This is not normal. This is not human. The ancient Stoics believed that a virtuous life was one of harmony, of reason, of seeking to better oneself and the world. But these people, the ones who take joy in suffering, are the very antithesis of virtue. They are the embodiment of what the Stoics feared most, the corruption of the soul. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But what of a person whose thoughts are filled with cruelty? What happens to the soul of one who thrives on the misery of others? They become something less than human. The Germans have a word for this, Schadenfreude, the pleasure derived from another's misfortune. But what we are discussing here is even worse. This is not just the passive enjoyment of someone else's downfall. This is an active desire to inflict pain. It starts subtly. Perhaps they belittle you when you fail. Perhaps they offer advice that is designed to make you doubt yourself. Perhaps they create small, unnecessary conflicts just to watch you suffer. And then it escalates. They push further. They instigate drama, knowing it will cause harm. They manipulate situations so that others suffer while they watch from the shadows, entertained. They may even commit acts of cruelty simply to see the effect it has. Why? Because it gives them a sense of power. Because in their twisted minds, another's pain is proof of their own superiority. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But these people do not seek to overcome adversity. They seek to create it, for others, never for themselves. They are the ones who laugh at tragedy, who mock the weak, who see suffering not as something to be healed, but as something to be enjoyed. How do you recognize them? Watch for the signs. Do they smirk when others are humiliated? Do they show no sympathy when someone is in pain? Do they take pleasure in cruelty, even if they disguise it as just a joke? Because make no mistake, if they enjoy your suffering today, they will ensure you suffer again tomorrow. And if you let them into your life, their enjoyment will come at your expense. There is only one way to deal with such people. Remove them. Cut them out completely. Because a person who delights in suffering is a disease, and the longer they remain in your life, the more they will poison you. The Stoics taught us that the highest virtue is wisdom, the ability to see the world clearly. And once you see such a person for what they truly are, you will know what must be done. Sign 8. They are empty inside, and they want to drag you into their emptiness. Wisdom seekers, we have arrived at the final and most terrifying sign. Evil is not always loud. It is not always violent. Sometimes it is hollow, a great, endless void that seeks to consume everything around it. There are people in this world who feel nothing. Not love, not guilt, not even true joy. They walk among us, imitating emotions, pretending to care, but inside, there is nothing. And they hate those who feel deeply. They despise those who have love, who have purpose, who have meaning. Because every moment of genuine happiness in another person is a reminder of what they lack. Have you ever encountered someone who seems to drain the life out of every room they enter? Someone who leaves you exhausted after every conversation, who makes you feel as if nothing matters, as if hope itself is a lie? That is their emptiness, reaching for you. The ancient philosophers warned us about these people. They exist in every era, in every society. Seneca wrote, "He who indulges in empty fears earns himself real fears." And what is greater emptiness than a life devoid of meaning? These people do not seek fulfillment. They do not strive for virtue. They do not build or create or love. They only consume. They drain energy, joy, and hope from those around them. At first they seem normal, perhaps even charming. They mimic emotions well. They say the right words, perform the right actions, but there's always something off, something you cannot quite place. And then slowly you begin to feel it. Conversations with them feel shallow, as if they are speaking words but not feeling them. They never express true passion, only imitations of it. They claim to care, but when the moment of truth comes, they are absent. And the worst part? They do not just live in emptiness. They want to pull you into it. They want to make you doubt your dreams. They want to convince you that love is pointless, that hope is foolish, that nothing truly matters. Because if you lose your light, if you become like them, then they will not feel so alone. This is why they are dangerous. Not because they will physically harm you, not because they will openly attack you, but because they will steal who you are. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the truth. You cannot save these people. You cannot fill the void inside them. They will never change because they do not want to. But you can save yourself. If you recognize them, if you refuse to let them drag you down, if you protect your soul from their emptiness. Wisdom seekers, the greatest tragedy in life is not to suffer. It is to lose yourself. And that is what these people seek to do, to make you like them. But you are not like them. You feel, you love, you create, you dream, and that is your greatest weapon. Never let anyone take it from you. Final words. Evil is not always obvious. It does not always wear a mask of horror. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it walks beside you, speaks softly, and pretends to care. But if you learn to see these signs, if you sharpen your wisdom, you will not be deceived. The ancient Stoics taught us that the greatest power is the power over oneself. And when you know what evil looks like, when you see it for what it truly is, you take that power back. You are not helpless. You are not weak. You are a seeker of wisdom, and wisdom will always be your greatest shield. Now go forth and stay vigilant.